Early days, for instance, is Nuns, the goodest of women, supposedly, and behaving as badly as possible.
Hi, I'm Zena Harris, a founder and entrepreneur working in the entertainment industry for more than 10 years now.
And I'm Mark Rabin, a two-time founder and innovator in the energy tech industry and spent the last decade powering films, events, and festivals with renewable energy.
Welcome to the tie-in.
So my name is Nat Bolt, and just to explain my weird accent, I was born in South Africa.
Okay.
I then spent many years in New Zealand. So I've got a bit of a mishmash where I don't say yeah, but I say yeah. Um, and now I live in Vancouver. I've been based here for the last 9 years. And yeah, I'm an actor, writer, filmmaker. And I've just come out of my first feature film called Holy Days, which I was very blessed to get an incredible A-list cast on board. Miriam Margolyes, Jacki Weaver, Judy Davis. And I shot that in New Zealand. So I actually went back to New Zealand where I first started writing the film. So it was a co-production between New Zealand and Canada. And so that's how I spent months and months there. And now we did the post-production in Canada. And prior to all of that, I basically, I did all the slashy stuff. So I was an actor, and then I got frustrated, and I thought, well, I could do this better. And so then I better prove that I can do it better. So I wrote a short film, and it was really hard. But
Yeah.
the short film then was shot, and I co-directed it with a friend, and it was really, really hard. And then we did really well at festivals, and so that's where the satisfaction came in, as it does. And so the seed was planted, and the addiction began. And then a few more short films, music videos, web series later. I would say I'd had sort of my taste of directing, which I think for me goes hand in hand with the writing and the acting, because acting, as you then realize, is super easy compared to all the other stuff. So it's great fun. And I love acting jobs now. And I don't complain as much. And then the writing is wonderful because it's the only time you really have control of a story, before everything else happens. And so that's my kind of happy little island, is writing. What I've come to discover is that I am quite obsessed with stories and comedies about women behaving badly. So that seems to be my genre. What kind of women can we find, and how badly can we make them behave? Holy Days, for instance, is Nuns, the goodest of women, supposedly, and behaving as badly as possible. So stealing money, racing cars, etc. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of.
That's so cool. That's so cool. A little bit of everything. And yeah, you kind of find your creative space in different avenues. So
Yeah,
it's neat.
yeah. Thanks. I mean, I think we all try to find our little happy place of,
Yeah.
what gives me meaning, what gives me purpose, what gives me satisfaction, and what gives me some income sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And we all met at the Sustainable Production Forum last year in Vancouver. You were there.
You were the host.
Yeah.
I hosted it. That's right. Yeah, I suppose I should make that connection. Also, I forgot to say I was on Riverdale. That's where a lot of people recognize Penelope Blossom, like the evil redhead, for 7 seasons. So that's how I sort of grew my profile. And through having a high profile in North America and originally in South Africa on this drama called Isidingo that I first had my big break on, which made me like a household name in on the African continent. I've always been obsessed with, well, what do you do with that? If you had some level of fame in inverted commas or just high profile, what is the use of that? Outside of selling more junk. Do you apply it in some other way? And so the way I came to host the Sustainable Production Forum was, um, back in South Africa. I worked for an organization called Earthlife, that was a zero waste, amongst other things, anti-nuclear zero waste organization. And so I just used my profile there to try and get eyes on what people should be thinking about. It was more in a general sense. And now what I love about being in BC is there's this focus on, well, look in your own backyard. If you're saying stop logging, stop this, stop that, well, what's the film and TV production world doing? because notoriously we are very wasteful.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, went to the first Sustainable Production Forum in Vancouver before COVID, and was just where, oh, this is my happy place. Just everything about it just made me feel better. From clean energy to hydrogen or electric cars to even the ticket was like plantable. It was impregnated with seeds. You could plant your ticket after the and yeah, and the fact that there was a lot of interest from the industry. You weren't trying to convert people; their people were already there. Yeah, and so luckily we come back from COVID and we're trying to find our feet again and do things better because I think also the COVID plus the strike, the whole disaster of steps that really like slowed everything down in the entertainment industry. I think if you swing it around to try and make it something more positive, well, something needs to break before you can build it back up again. Sometimes it needs to break completely. Um, and ours got pretty broken. So, what do we do to make it better now that we have people's attention? And I think that's where the Sustainable Production Forum kind of came back,
Mhm.
smaller, but it'll no doubt build again, and more committed with really committed people who have fantastic ideas, and all the suggestions and documentaries, etc., around that of what do we do now in BC where and Canada, but I'm BC based, where we still have a really great situation. We have incredible tax incentives, we have all the amazing landscapes, we have the most talented crews and cast, um, and experience. And so, if people want to come play in our backyard, and I'm very honored to say our, as in I can include myself in it, because I know I'm very honored to be here at all. Um, God knows why anybody lets me in anywhere. It's still a mystery to me. But if you can do that and say, what are the rules we want to put in place to just say, how do we do this better this time round? Because we're still doing amazingly as a place to come and make your projects.
Yeah.
Um, and then hopefully yeah, I'm part of the Sustainable Production Committee here as well. And just coming up with, yeah, in an ideal world is, can we make it policy to leave things not just as you found them, but better, um, and arrive with the right attitude and leave with the right attitude and be friends for life. That's
Mhm.
Mhm.
that's kind of what my ideal would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And are you able to bring this energy and vision to your productions that you're doing yourself or that you're participating in?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So, of course, I set off. Holy Days was shot in New Zealand and post production here in Canada. And, I set off with all the right ideas of how we were going to do it. But we ended up shooting in Christchurch, which is the sort of the biggest city on the South Island of New Zealand. And while the recycling might be better on the North Island, the recycling was not good. So, I was super proud. Day one, I give the speech. This is how we're going to do it. It's going to be a sustainable production. And then all the trash was separated. And then I noticed sort of week by week that it was not being separated and that there were black trash bags and not compostable ones. And everything was just being mixed up. So I said, what is going on? And they just said, look, there's nowhere to take the stuff. There are no recycling plants that we can actually go to. There's like a sort of a minimalistic recycling system where they'll pick up from households, but only certain things like paper and glass. And you just think,
Yeah.
oh, and this also blew my mind when I was living in New Zealand, that the PR, and this is always the thing, the PR is so good that it's just clean, green, pristine. The rest of the world goes to World War III. We could all go to New Zealand, and it's completely
In our bunkers.
yeah, in our bunkers with Hobbit land above. And
Mhm.
and then you kind of go there. Well, and I lived there, and it's so not true. So the well done to the PR team, but it's not true. And so we ended up hardly being able to recycle. Um, One of the few things that I actually did get going was they were because Christchurch and New Zealand in general is such a farming, mecca. Too much so, as in that's also a really big part of their environmental issues. It's totally overfarmed. But some of the crew had small holdings, and so they would take the leftover food at the end of the day. We just had buckets, and those buckets went to their farms to feed the animals the leftover food. So that was at least something. But yeah, so that was a big eye opener. Um, and coming back to Canada, the next film that I want to be doing is Sweet Child of Mine. It's another road trip movie. So both of them were road trips. And this one is set in the future, post-apocalyptic. And so in that sense, the post-apocalyptic world in my vision of the film would be completely recycled in a beautiful Mad Max kind of way. So everything has to be rebuilt and upcycled, and that would be the perfect
Mm.
opportunity to just create like the beautiful apocalypse. Because I I've had this thing of like, it's so clear that we manifest what we talk and think about all the time. That's why we're in the mess we're in now. We talk doom and gloom all the time, and wow, look at what we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
if you
Your
look,
thoughts create your reality, right? Or what you say creates.
it's undeniable.
Yeah.
And if you look at like Children of Men or like 28 Days Later, which has become 28 Years Later, and all of the zombie movies, and they're all just, everything's grey and broken and blown up. Um, well, wow, aren't we heading in that direction?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if the apocalypse was really represented as something had to be broken down to be built back up again, did anybody notice during the apocalypse the beautiful sunsets that were maybe a mushroom cloud but bright pink and orange? I mean, can we work with that? Um,
There are some great colors.
and yeah, and then that's the regeneration of nature happens, and the regeneration of wildlife, and some of the beautiful things that we remember from COVID. Actually, like, we took that a bit further and built everything up from scratch and reused everything and recycled all the clothing. I mean, that would be a perfect opportunity to tell a story where everything around you is sustainably done. And all the drama and comedy that happens within that. It's not a
Yeah.
girl film by any stretch of the imagination, and there are still zombies. But yeah, just to kind of redesign it into something bright and hopeful and
Mhm.
beautiful. I was speaking to a friend of mine, Neil Blomkamp, because he and I love that sort of like mishmash of sci-fi and social commentary, and he was like, "What if it was like Miyazaki, meets for people who know Studio Ghibli, like if it was Miyazaki meets the apocalypse, what would that look like?" I'm like, yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Beautiful apocalypse.
yeah,
Beautiful
Love that.
apocalypse.
so many cool things that can happen, right?
Yeah.
So
And actually, yeah, just to finish that thought, like when I was hosting the Sustainable Production Forum, I actually met the people from Nordberg.
oh
Mhm.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, and they do the cardboard construction, very high quality cardboard. And if you go onto Nordwerk, it's WERK on the end, onto their website. I mean, they can create anything, anything. It's amazing. They do massive events and they do smaller set constructions. And so I was speaking to them about, what if we made all our sets, if it was a collaboration, and we created all our sets out of Nordwerk cardboard, which could then be deconstructed afterwards, obviously, and just reused, repainted, or recycled. So, just thinking in that direction of the beautiful apocalypse, that you can have all these found resources, and what you have to make, you make out of cardboard with, and get your production designers in to just get crazy.
Yeah. I know. I know. There's so many possibilities I find, and opportunities for creativity and interesting new products that seem to be popping up, like Nordwerk, as you say, and all. I'm just, where do you think we are in this whole sustainability continuum? Because I feel like, like maybe you notice in Vancouver, there's a lot. It seems to be a lot of conversation around it, awareness, these sorts of things. But then, you had mentioned going to New Zealand, and it was a little different there. And I'm just curious with your experiences around in different areas and in talking to different people and whatnot. I'm curious, where do you think we are in this conversation, in this continuum, kind of broadly speaking?
I mean, I think Canada and BC are probably in the top 15% around the world.
Okay.
Probably, I've seen movies on sustainability from Switzerland, etc., where they really sort of have got it all right and 10 more steps ahead. But they're tiny countries,
Yeah.
and for Canada to be where we are uh, already is pretty impressive. And then to try and collaborate with different provinces, and how do we draw it all together and have a common vision. Uh, I don't know too much about the other provinces, but I think in the meetings that we've had, people are pretty much on the same page. And the conversations, like Noah Rogers is the head of the sustainability committee, and just so much passion.
Yeah.
Annabelle Wilser as well, and so we're already showing off the change to clean energy and clean generators and clean transport. We're already talking about policy changes. What is the line item that has to be fulfilled in terms of reusing and recycling on set, using people coming to set with their own water bottles, their own reusable crockery and cutlery, that those are provided. Those are, I don't know how far they are implemented, but all of those ideas are there, and respected as good ideas.
Yeah.
So I think we're doing well, and I think policy will make all the difference.
Yeah.
Everything has been discussed. They're all great ideas, and they are implementable. And now it just has to be a rule, a law. And if that can happen across Canada, then I see a very beautiful non-apocalypse. We don't have to have a mushroom cloud in the background. It can just be a beautiful sunset.
Our designer is Aaliyah Kane. Music is by Peter Chapman. Social media is by Sharon Ewan. Our editor and producer is Rachel Werbel.